Alrighty, just at the stop there, call came through. I do apologise, but we're back on board. Yes, with the idler and the actual spur, there's been a lot of movement. So what we've done is, as I said, we use a 4x7 shim. So it's 4mm inside there, and 7mm just comes out to basically place itself on the outside race, but not go to, sorry, inside race, but not the outside race. So what happens is it then gives it better adjustability to put a couple of shimmers in there and stop that fucking, ooh, I nearly saw there, stop that from going left to right, and centers it very nicely. That's what I've done on there. It works with either the plastic or the alloy ones. I've just tried it on the plastic ones and it's spot on, not a problem. So look for 4x7 shims, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 to do your spacing on this to make sure it's all sweet. Alrighty. Now, the other big part of this is everyone's got a choice. Now, this is my choice because it's clean. It doesn't do anything to the car, and it's a drop-on fit, and there's less maintenance, all right? The pivots on the car originally, as it comes out of the factory, are good. They're actually quite good, but you've got to keep them clean. They don't like getting grit inside it. So at the end of every run, literally get a compressor and blow them out, because they're a steel ball into a alloy cup and then an alloy nut over the top. They do wear out, they do get sloppy if they're not maintained and cleaned. And then after you clean them, what you've got to do is put a tiny little bit of oil to make sure that there's some lubricant in the ball, so it actually does allow movement on suspension, clean, free movement up and down. You can use a couple of different variations of lubrication on it. I just use a drop of oil, but these arms, both front and rear, are ones that I make under the Pit Lane brand, and I make them so they're a fixed toe. They're not adjustable by the little screws at the bottom, because this is now completely fixed. There's no adjustment on that whatsoever. So this is fixed 2.5 degrees. You can get fixed 2, 2.5 and 3 degrees. I run 2.5 on the back of this, and these arms are made for Schumacher MI5 already pre-fitted ball and cup, and they literally go into the arm from the underside up, and a tiny drop of super glue that literally wicks around that. It's a very tight fit, so when you push it in, it's actually a very tight fit into the arm to make sure that it's not sloppy. And then a tiny little bit of super glue, and it wicks between the actual plastic and the carbon, and it sits there. Done. Job's finished. Super smooth, dead centered on the chassis, no issues with fitting. I like it. I got these made 3 years ago when this started first coming out, especially when it had the O-ring suspension, which was, I liked it. The O-ring suspension worked really good, but trying to set it up was just a nightmare. When it did work and you did get it set up, the car was absolutely phenomenal. But a lot of people were just getting their heads absolutely beaten around trying to figure out what O-rings to run on the actual car, whether it be stiff top, soft bottom, blah blah blah, all that type of stuff. Trying to achieve droop was a nightmare. So the idea lasted 18 months, then gone. Came these are brilliant. The originals are great. I like this is what I run. I made them because I had a choice on what I wanted to do, and I've sold them around the world, and there's quite a fair few guys running these, and it gives it a fixed toe in, so there's no chance of any movement of the screws coming loose and changing it as you're running. So as I said, fixed 2, 2.5 and 3 mil. The fronts are just a fixed, whatever it may be, arm with the cups, with the Schumacher MI5s, and they stay as they are original to the actual chassis. There's no change on the front, so that's it on those ones. In the future, as we go and progress, and the question is, why do I do all this? Because I like tinkering. Tinker. In the future, I'm going to have, still trying to work out when, much thicker arms, but these will all be recessed down to the correct height and everything else. 2mm grub screws straight into the carbon with the carbon thread cut, and then slight bit of super glue to stiffen up the fibers. But I'll be running the MI8s. The MI8s are a deeper set ball, but the best part of it, think of these, the MI5s with a cup over the top. These are MI8s, but they're sealed at the top. So when you press the ball in, you can't get dirt inside there going in from the top into the actual cup itself, into the pivot. So these will be the new version of the arms with the cups eventually. They'll be a press fit in, a very tight press fit in. I don't want it to be loose, but these will actually be held in with an O-ring. So if they do wear out, they'll pop out. So there'll be no CA on these ones. These will actually work really, really good. No CA, drop-in fit, O-ring to hold, but they're the MI8 balls. But I haven't got the arms made as yet to fit them on. Soon. As soon as we have something going, that's what's going to come out. It'll still be, again, fixed to 2.5 and 3 mil. So there's lots of options there available. Now, the car as it was run, this was the setup. I had normal droop. What was that? Front was 4.8. The rear was 5.4, 5.2. And I cut it down a little bit more, but that's where I started, and cut it down to the point where I think it's about 1.5 millimeter over ride height, 1 millimeter over ride height. Okay, so whatever your ride height is, drop it 1 mil. Whatever your ride height is, drop it 1.5 mil. That worked really good at Adelaide. Made the car really flat, very, very flat going around the track. Spacers, because this is a slightly higher ball, nothing at the front here, but I had 2 millimeter spacers. 2 millimeter spacers at the front, there that you can see, 2 millimeter there, and that's the ball that's out of the air racing, and that makes it run nearly dead on flat as, so it's not inclined or otherwise. So it's worked really good. On the rear, 2 and 2. I find it works really good for me. I don't change that. So 2 and 2 on the back, inside and outside, so they sit slightly high. Play. There's no setup that's choice for anyone. Everyone's got a different style of driving. Jordan Hunting, one of my Team Powers drivers, had a run with this at Adelaide. He liked it. He said the car feels really planted, very, very safe, but you can push it hard and it doesn't have any crazy tendencies. We had one portion on the track where he was pushing it really hard, and it was a right-hand corner. It had this weird tendency to want to do a rotate and so on the spot. I figured it out that it was the battery. I was running 7 pedal packs for the meeting, thinking that I needed big packs to run, but they are heavy, and I forgot to balance the car out with extra weight on the other side, so it was really heavy on this side. So when it was trying to roll, there was no weight going over to the left hand side, so no grip, and the car just do, pirouette. Put a 6,000 pack, which is lighter by about 25 grams. No issues, car fixed, without having to actually add weight. So just be wary that the weight of the pack on this side has to balance out on that side. I didn't do it. It felt weird. When I put the 6,000, it was perfect. All right, so, but he had good words to say. The car was really stable, very, very predictable, and very comfortable to drive if you want to try and push it. So this setup is spacer 1, spacer 1, spacer 1, 2, level with that, Schumacher, Express, racing bits and pieces. Like I said, that's literally a hodgepodge of bits and pieces to do that. You can do it easier than that, by all means. There's other ways of doing it. Raise shocks with the longer pivot ball, so you can go right through. So you can go right through that into there with a lot of thread. I run a really tame thread lock, which gives it bite and does not rotate. You've got to grab, because these have a hole, you've got to grab it with, I think it's about a 4 millimeter hole to be able to turn it, but it doesn't grab it to the point where you're actually putting strain on the actual pivot for the top of the shock, breaking it or anything like that, which is really good. That way then you can actually be assured that they're not going to rotate during a race. Arms are the pit lane arms with the cups. They're the pit lane battery holders. Chassis standard, top is standard. All of this is standard. The motor mount's been machined. There's a couple of people that said, how do you run your wire? It's been machined to allow the wire to creep underneath. MRT transponder, I like them because they're black and they've got a funky blue LED. It just looks weird. This little bugger here, that works a treat. Stops. What it does is it takes away the fade of the battery towards the end of the race, so you feel like you've still got some punch in the left in the battery. So when you pull your trigger, the ESC will take the first literally split second of power from that, then draw it from the battery, so it stop all the load coming off the battery and helps the battery last a lot better, so you have that feel of punch all the way through a race, so you don't feel like it's getting soft or anything like that. Recommend it in stock. Mod, nah, not of any benefit. You can try it, but I don't think it's going to be any benefit. But in stock in 21 and 13, definitely. Even GT 17.5 on any ESC makes a big difference on how the battery rides right throughout the race. The fan is a WTF assembly with carbon guards and a little bracket that allows it to sit. Oh, I've broken it. Oh no. New fan wire. No, well, it has to be. So it actually sits at, it's about 20 degrees, I'll give or take. So what happens is you get a lot of air going over the ESC, but also blows on this side of the motor. Because you've got to think of it this way. You've got a fan blowing here, and it's nothing there. That will blow, 30-30. No difference, and that keeps that side cool and that side cool, so it evens the actual cooling around the motor. Much better than just one cold area and one hot area. Yeah, it's just common sense. That's the little Team Powers alloy fan, shortened wires plugged into the receiver, Futaba receiver. This is the SRS digital programmable servo. This thing is an absolute monster. I tried setting it at about 3/4 up on all the settings from standard. I couldn't drive it. It was way too aggressive on response. It was literally just not standing still. It's faster than I can steer the car. Okay, so I've taken it back and dulled it down and upped the torque. So down on the speed, but up on the torque. Brilliant idea out of TP. Lots of people are copying now. It's not a cheap servo, but it does the job really well for what it's intended to. That's the best part of it. You do have to buy the program card on top. You can run it out of the box as it is. The settings are fantastic as default, but if you do want to play with it, you do need to buy the box. Okay, you do need to buy the box. Another little interesting thing here. Now I did this as a personal preference. There's two little screws and washers just here, just in front of the actual ESC at those 2 points there. All it does for me is trying to guess when I'm dropping that in to make sure that it sits nicely. It gives good clearance on between the speed control and the motor, because I twisted this to get the short tension on it so it can't flow into the actual belt itself, because it comes from underneath the actual board and around and up. So I twist until I get a nice clean tight feel there. But this allows me to just basically drop it and push it forward and drop it straight onto the double-sided tape. So it doesn't want to go forward, but it sits there nicely and square on the chassis. And it doesn't really add any weight. It actually weighs the car up really nicely instead of having to try to always add weight, stay too light and add weight. Battery that, 6,000, all this weighs up really nicely, and the car's nice and balanced. So that's it. Ride height was 5'2", 5'4", 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, 1.5. How would you call it? Dual rates on this, I was running nearly 90%. The wear on the tyres, it was even right through. There was no difference in wear front and rear. So it shows that it was running really nicely at Adelaide. I don't know how it's going to go on other tracks, but we're going to try it and see what happens. So that's nearly what I call the BRENDALE setup, except for 3 little changes. And that's how the tyres came off at Adelaide, literally at the end of a run. Still clean, very little in the way of scuffing, which is the best part of it. They're 42 SUs. A little bit of a death ring only because of the way I've got it set up there, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 runs. These are 5 runs. Nice, clean, and not aggressive graining on the actual tyres themselves. They worked really good at Adelaide. They'll work pretty much anywhere else. That's pretty much it. Settings on that are my preference. They're not going to suit everyone. The motor is a V3 with a 12.3 rotor. I should have actually put the 12.5 because it had lots of RPM, but not enough bottom end to pull it hard out of the corners compared to the other guys on the track, but that's just a learning experience. That's it. Now, I hope I made some sense on this and didn't ramble on too much, but if you've got a question on anything, by all means, please do ask. Happy to help. Also, the guys on the forum that are there supplying information on their builds, ask. The more you ask, the more you learn. The more we learn, the more we play around with bits and pieces and improvements down the road. Now, in signing off, one person asked me in particular, one of my drivers, what is the benefit of running the new shock mounts? Nothing. It just makes it nice and tidy. It has no benefit from the carbon to here. All it really does is it doesn't improve your drive and doesn't improve the way the car's set up. What it does do is it lowers CG by a little bit. Front and rear, lowers the center of gravity because you're putting a lot of the weight further down. They work on linear. I've figured out a way to actually make them work with the RAS, so your choice what you want to do. But the weight is bugger all difference. It's slightly lighter running this than it is running the towers by a couple of grams. But the difference is it lowers the center of gravity. More than anything, where the center of gravity sits there on this, it just drops it down. Same as the rear. All right, same as the rear. The motor mount, the big single piece, makes everything easier to work with. It has no benefit on you driving the car really, because the standard out of the box kit with a double mount, and if you cut the portion of the mount on this side so you can get to your screws, car doesn't change in the way it drives. It just allows you to get to the screws a lot better. Okay, they've done it on the front here so you can see that it's only the mount but no extension where you could run the motor left or right. And that out of the box in 21.5 is an absolute beast of a car, whether it be in the R3 or the standard T3M 2020 version, which is the full-blown competition with the carbon arms and the pivots and the alloy pivots. Alrighty. Questions, please ask. I'm happy to answer. Reference to the bits and pieces I use, PM me please, private message. I'll put this up and some more information a little bit later. There's some more information to come through as well. But I hope that made some sense on what I do, how I do, and what I do. I like tinkering. That's the reason why these changes are there. It's a preference. You don't have to do it. You can run the car out of the box. And then as you go along, throw these things on it. As I said, all these mods just makes the car easier to work on. That is it. Thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And that's it for now. Take care. Have a good night. Say hi to your family. Ciao for now, kids.